All right, peeps. I think we're rocking and rolling here, so we're gonna get it going. Yeah. So 3.1, biodiversity and evolution. What is biodiversity? Before I begin, I'm just gonna tell you I'm drinking like a ginger ale. All right. So yeah. Cool thing is, aluminum cans are pretty recyclable. They're actually, from what I've heard, the most easily recyclable and all that good stuff. So, all right, what is biodiversity? Species richness is a number of different species that an area has. So, like when something's species rich, like the rainforest, it's got a lot of different variety of species. It's not that like one that you've got like is very deep. You might only have like three lions in the rainforest or something. Lions aren't really in the rainforest, but bear with me here. All right, species evenness is the individual species percent of all the species. So, um, like it's kind of like how many of those species there are, basically. So, like it's yeah, there's like a ton of variety of species, but for each species, how many of them are there? So, yep. Habitat diversity is species, habitat diversity, species diversity, and genetic diversity. There's three types of diversities right there. And all of them are pretty important to just existing and surviving. TOK, we use the word biodiversity now more than nature. Does this represent a paradigm shift? So, does it for you? Does it not? Okay. Define these on page 252 to 253 or by any other means. You can Google, use your AI of choice, use the book. Species diversity, genetic diversity. Resilience is the ability of an ecosystem to bounce back after disturbance. Resilience is huge. Bring resilience up to them. When I say them for IB training and whatnot, if they're asking you on an IB exam anything and you can work in resilience, I recommend it. All right. Increase the biodiversity is the increase of resilience. Hey, look, there's safety in numbers. Just look at like humanity with COVID. COVID hits, and because we're all genetically diverse as humans, some got hit harder than others. So, just the way the cookie crumbles. So, down with species diversity first. So, species richness is the number of species, obviously. But the problem is, if species is rare, it won't be around in the future. So when they talk about this, comes up with IUCN, like red list and stuff. So once you get down to a certain point with a species where you're ridiculously low, you're going to go extinct. It's just pretty much foregone conclusion. So for validity, count the present, count the number present, just to give it, the more accurate the number, the better the count. So species evenness is the number in each species. So it's a little bit better way of like describing it. Solves for the problem in the richness. So it's between species evenness and species richness is where you really get a pretty good number for species diversity. So now the diversity indices are right, and that's a word that gives me trouble. All right. Sorry, indices, or however you pronounce it. Diversity index, D, is the quantitative estimate of biological variability in space time, plus describes, plus compares communities. So you got a whole lot pretty much in there. It's a long equation. So it can compare two similar ecosystems. So say you're comparing a rainforest in Indonesia versus one in Brazil. It can compare two communities in an ecosystem. So once again, rainforest in Brazil, you're comparing the north side of the river to the south side of the river. You can compare one ecosystem over time. So you can look at the tropical rainforest in Brazil and you can compare it over 20 years. So it's really pretty good for that. Low diversity is an indicator of really bad things: pollution, eutrophication, colonization, which is basically humanity doing stuff to destroy habitat. Number of species. That's a generalized pattern but not complete story. So, like, so you could have a lot of humans, it doesn't mean there's a lot of biodiversity when, it's like there is with genetic diversity within our breed, but it doesn't mean that a lot of other animals are thriving. Repeat investigations to determine if change in natural or anthropogenic. So, yeah, we're going to get into this with more extinction rates down the road with 3.1, but there's natural extinction. Look, dinosaurs were only going to be around for so many millions of years. Humanity, unfortunately, will only be around for so many millions of years before something happens. Mammoths were around for how many years before humans came along anthropogenically and killed them. So, um, so the D right there, diversity index is increase equals more species. So the increase in that number means more species, the better. So increase down here, no, 1 equals lowest number on the Simpson index. I think I'm going to bump this up a little bit to 120 so you can all see it a little better. 125. Yeah, that works out better, right? Good. Many indices, but the Simpson is the best. So, yep. Just to have that in your notebook. Simpson's reciprocal diversity index, that's a mouthful, measures the number of species plus the evenness as well. And the higher the number, the better. So it can compare similar ecosystems or the same ecosystem over time. So back to comparing like the rainforest over 20 years, it can do that. It can also compare two different rainforests. So it's good like that. Habitat and genetic diversity. Another way of looking at diversity using genetics. So individuals always have different genes. So unless they're clones, all right. More individuals equals more genetic diversity. That's one of the reasons why biodiversity is so important, because different ways of looking at it. Hey, look, in an engineering world, they determine that basically if all you have is one type of engineer, if all you have is old, bald, Caucasian guys with beards, those are the only sort of ideas you're going to get. All right. When you have people from different backgrounds, you get different thought patterns, you get different genetics. It's just a different way of looking at things to get the optimal result. So, yep, better way of looking at it, better way of doing things. So, think less inbreeding. Not a great way of saying it, but correct way. So, more individuals, more genetic diversity. So, if you have more cross genetics, it's a stronger society. Different populations in different locations have different genes. So there's no genetic diversity equals no ability to adapt, evolve. You just don't get better. So, and this, it's not the biggest and strongest that survive, it's the most adaptable. So, rainforest coral reefs is the high species diversity. So, urban polar areas equals low species diversity. There's not as many animals you see in a city, really. On the edge of humanity, I can make an argument. But generally in urban area, you only have so many animals that can thrive there, so many different types. So examples are cheetah, low genetic diversity. And reason why is because 10,000 years ago, almost went extinct from climate change plus predator competition. So still has quite a bit of predator competition. Cheetah will bag a gazelle, right? Unfortunately, it's fast, but it's not exactly big. So it's got to fend off then hyenas and lions. Who would love to do nothing more than take that cheetah's fast food. So, yep. So current numbers are low because of loss of habitat. Females have one litter, but cubs have traits from multiple fathers. This helps increase genetic diversity. This is one of the things unique to cheetahs. So, all right. Cavendish bananas. Most U.S. bananas in grocery stores. Yep. They're clones with no genetic diversity. They don't even reproduce naturally. So, yeah, they're complete clones. Now, the problem is with that, if a disease comes in, it just goes right across and wipes all of them out. Um, the entire banana population, which would definitely stink because I get cramps now in my old age, and bananas really help out with them with potassium. So, yep, not a big fan of that. Interesting enough, if you ever do see like variety of bananas, like my wife's from Puerto Rico, and they've got like bananas down there, manzanillas or something like they're like apple bananas. They're out of this world. They also have like little stubby ones, like fingerling bananas. They're like tasty. Okay. I find they get like a little bit smaller the fruit, the more intense the flavor sometimes. So, yep. All right. How would this affect economics in the US and foreign markets if bananas got murked, if they just died? All right. How would this affect you? Ooh, kind of gave you a hint there with the cramps for me. All right. European red fox. Increased genetic diversity, three distinct populations. So if one gets wiped out, others will survive. There's two others, man. You're not getting rid of the European red fox. Domesticated dogs, increased genetic diversity. These are anthropogenic, though. So, I mean, we kind of like altered the genes for what we wanted. Man created more species, more variety within the species is more adaptability. So, which is a good thing. Humans impact this with genetically modified organisms like corn or dogs too. So, yep. Artificial breeding like apples and dogs. All right. Problem is reduces variation or makes clones. So, and the other thing is sometimes we make it when it's artificial breeding or genetically modified organisms, it then outcompetes the wild organism or the wild plant as well. So, which then decreases the genetic diversity. So sometimes we put up with it if it makes big crops. Yeah, money. So what do humans care about? Making money. So yep. Um, it just you got to outweigh it, you know. So define habitat diversity. You can use AI of your choice, book, Google. Yep, knock yourself out. Go for it. All right. Biodiversity links to health, resilience, and sustainability. It's not fair to compare different types of ecosystems. All right. An increase in biodiversity equals an increase of healthy, resilient, sustainable ecosystem. So the complexity, let's see, biodiversity links to health, resilience, and sustainability. So the more different people you got at the party, the better the party, the more it's going to last. Yep. Complexity of the ecosystem. Increase the complex food web equals increase resilient. Why? Because if one species something happens where the numbers go down, all the other species around it are going to do all right. They're going to end up making up for it by eating other species or of plants or animals. So that's why increased diversity with food webs really does increase with resilience and bouncing back from something catastrophic. So the problem is it's tough for species to return. So some species it's easier for than others. So just depends on how like quick you can reproduce. So stage of succession. Pioneer species are few in the beginning, if you remember. So then climax community nears means species are stable. So, but once they're stable, younger habitats have less diversity plus less resilience. So when they're just starting out, they're very fragile. Bad things can happen to them pretty quickly. So limiting factors and stability. Raw materials, abiotic factors. These are really big right here. These are quite frequently on test. They're like, hey, I mean, it's usually not like a huge question, but they're like, name an abiotic factor that contributes to a climate, blah, blah, blah. And it's like temperature, oxygen, water, things you need for life generally. Let's see. Oh, yeah, nutrients. Yep. I had 3 out of the 4 without looking. Frequent natural disasters build up resilience. So, look, I'm here in the New England of, New England in the United States, in Connecticut. I'm up a little hour and a half northeast of New York City. we get hurricanes, but we don't get hit by them as often, say, as Florida or the Caribbean. So the result is our ecosystem, our forest, when it hits, even though we got big old trees with, you would think deep, long, strong roots, and they just get knocked right the heck down because they're not used to those hurricanes. Where like the Caribbean, Florida, they're like, oh yeah, hurricane. I've seen three of you before. Ha ha ha. All right. They tend to be more resilient to it, build up strength to it. So, yeah. Uh, Odd natural disasters have no resilience against it. So, like, look, um, volcano eruption, something like that. Don't got anything against it. Age of the ecosystem. Older the ecosystem, generally more biodiversity. It's been around for a while, there's more biodiversity with it. Older ecosystems can be unbalanced with more older species, though. So if you look at a forest, you got a lot of OG trees and not as many young trees. Guess what? Those OG trees might go down in the hurricane too because their time's up. You know, they're not as strong as they were when they were younger. They're not fighting for it. So, habitat diversity. Ecosystems can have multiple habitats. Rainforest levels okay, so ecosystems can have multiple habitats. You got yourself a rainforest, right? It's different levels to it. There's the ground level where there's barely any sunlight hitting through. Um, then you got mid-range where you got like a lot of lichens and stuff growing on trees. And then you got the canopy way up high. And so rainforests have like multiple levels vertical of living. Same thing for mountains because there's different elevations. So you're going to find bird populations will really thrive at different elevations. Some will thrive when it's higher and some will thrive when it's lower. Same thing with plant species as well. Coral reefs, different size habitats as well. So, um, yep. Biodiversity can damage ecosystems. Invasive species, anybody? Biodiversity could be from fragmentation, breaking it up. Fragmentation means instead of like, okay, you see this whole screen? Now imagine you just cracked it. You got, it's like you still have the same size screen. It's just that it's broken up into smaller bits and pieces. So humanity does this quite a bit when we're building like roads and houses and stuff, and just instead of having one large park, now you've got like a bunch of smaller broken down ones. So grazing is difficult to manage as different plants need different amounts. Yep. Um, what it means by that is like you different plants can handle a certain amount of grazing is good for it. Makes it come back stronger, makes it come back better. But if you go over that, obviously the rebound effect is pretty bad. So some ecosystems are stable with only a few plants and animals. All right. And that's just the way they are. They're like the tundra. You're not going to have as many up there. So higher alpine as well. You're just not going to have as many plant animal species thriving up there in the higher altitudes. So define these for me: evolution, mutation, natural selection, extinction, speciation. Use AI for it. Use Google. Use the book. We got it right there for you. How new species form. Summary of the theory of evolution. So each individual is different genetically, except clones. Yep. Potatoes, if you cloned potatoes, no genetic differentiation there. Different genes cause variations, and some variations stink and they get murked and they're out. No worries. Others that are like, hey, kind of beneficial, they stick around. So resources are limited. So advantaged individuals are more likely to survive and reproduce. If this would be like a great question on a test, by the way, would be like outline the steps for the theory of evolution or something like with a plant. Okay. Um, so Resources are limited. Advantaged individuals are more likely to survive and reproduce. Variations are inherited. Over the time, changes is made. What does the term survival of the fittest mean to you? All right. Who is more likely to survive, the biggest, strongest, or the most adaptable? Most adaptable. All right. So extinction is natural and eventual. Death and taxes. We all gonna die. All right. Humanity will only be around for so long. Hopefully, it's like millions and millions and more years. But yeah, okay. Speciation. Populations are separated and become different over time. Cannot interbreed. So, yep, three types. Geographic isolation, which is land or water separated population. I'm trying to think of a situation with this. Can't right now. All right, drawing a blank. Sorry. Temporal isolation, same location, but a group now operates at different hours. Yes. If here you are as a male deer, and there's some deer you want to, get with. All right, and some female deer. The only problem is if they're running around during the day and you're a night owl kind of guy, you two ain't gonna mix and match. So, yep. Behavioral isolation, mating seasons change. Same thing as temporal, it's just the seasonal. So if your mating season is in the fall, if you're male and the females come into heat during the spring, it's not going to match up. So the island rule. Ooh, this is interesting. Species separated. Rule is that big species become smaller. Yep, on an island. And smaller species become larger. So, yep. Reason why is because of limited resources and the habitat shrinks large species. Not as much food, not as much resources. So if you're a big species, you get smaller. If you're a smaller species, though, there's no competition. So you get bigger. So behavioral, no predators, less competition, and larges, smaller species. So be interesting to see like capybaras with that one. They're the largest rodents, I think, but like I'm not sure if they're on an island. All right. Physical barriers, rivers, mountains, oceans, etc. Continental drift and plate tectonics. At times, continents were all connected. Now they're spread apart. Evidence from rocks, fossils, current animals, things like that. So, yep. Yep. Let's see here. Book goes into examples on page 260, which we're not going to cover. All right. Just telling that you don't have to copy this down in yellow if you're in my class, but just telling you if you're looking at this video and you're from taking ESS from a class from an instructor that doesn't look like me. So, all right, let's see if I can get this one. Endemism on isolated islands. Define endemic species, page 260. Remote islands increases to endemic species, decreases species richness, low variety. So reasons for endemism, all right. Animals specialize and dominate the smaller isolated habitat. So, yep, they just come in, it's a small, like big fish in a small pond, and they dominate it. Population numbers are low, smaller dating pool, less genetic diversity. Think of like all the bullies around only got to make out with each other. All right. There wouldn't be a whole lot of diversity with them. And then over time, they just get kind of like genetically weaker. So, low or no influx of new blood genes. So, yep. Problems easy to go extinct because the numbers are low. Less adaptable because the lower genetic diversity. If predators are introduced, oh my God, the population is screwed because they aren't used to it and they just go, all right. Vulnerable to invasive species. Yep. Trouble bouncing back from habitat destruction. Yep. So all this is very true. Like when something bad happens and there's low genetic diversity, they get affected and screwed first, not the hardest. Discuss whether biodiversity loss or climate change is greater threat to human societies. Ooh, if that was a test question, that would probably be a 9-pointer. Okay, something like that. Probably want to see pros and cons for both sides. All right, hotspots. Definition is an area that has more biodiversity. So, usually near the tropics, a lot of rainforests, all are threatened, unfortunately, all your hotspots. So, a lot of endemic plants in the area, only 2.5% of the land surface on Earth. So, it's only a small proportion on Earth of the land that's actual hotspots. However, though, it contains a huge amount of the plants and species diversity that we have on Earth. I have a lot of humans living nearby, contains 60% of the world's species. Yeah. So, problems with naming hotspots. So, peeps focus on plants, not the animals. So, yeah. All right. Um, we don't represent species diversity or the richness as well with like a hotspot. So, the focus is on lost areas, not if the loss is still happening. So, yeah. Doesn't look at genetic diversity and doesn't account for abiotic factors like water, temperature as well. Temperature is big for climate change, global warming as well. Yeah. All right. So mutations, DNA, and genetic diversity. Phenotype is the outward appearance determined by your DNA. So guess what? Both my parents were Caucasian. My father was bald. You know that how they say that your hairline is going to follow your mother's father? Yeah, he had a full head of hair when we put him in the casket when he was dead. So that's a bunch of BS. Um, my father is bald though, so guess what? At 20 years old, guess which way I was going? Bald. My father's got a beard too, so just genetically, it's what you get. Mutations in DNA occur naturally because of other factors as well, chemicals, uh, infections, radiation, human interference. All I'm thinking about is Spider-Man right now. So, yep, all those factor into it. So, if you're born near Chernobyl, with nuclear radiation, bad things. Hey, guess what? Um, if you came out a little bit messed up and you're right by some like chemicals, that were around, like PFASs, in my class we learned how bad PFASs are for, kind of the world. They're going to be really big coming up the next 20 years. That can mess up your DNA as well. So, possible mutation results, no effect. Okay. Or it can only be cosmetic. Like, um, trying to think like genetically, hairstyles, like cosmetic. I don't know. Like, does a beard really help me out over a guy who can only grow like a mustache? No, not really. It's cosmetic, benefit or drawback. So, yep. Um, hey, guess what? I'm relatively tall. I'm 6 feet, and I'm a little under 2 meters if you're over in like Europe. And so I'm at the grocery store. I can reach stuff that's high up. Um, Others can't. That's a benefit to me. It's not really a benefit when I hit my head on stuff, though. So, yep. Small or large impact. Obviously, me being 6 foot tall is not as big of an impact as other things. So, yep. All right, no need to draw this, but this is like a joke. Let me see if I can bump that up a little bit. 150. Bummer of a birthmark, Hal. All right. Yeah, if you're a deer and you've got that birthmark on you, that's a rough one. Could be worse, though, if it was right at the side by that shoulder blade. All right. That guy would be target practice. So, yep. Humans speed up by modifying. What is a genetically modified organism? Hook me up with that. All right. When eating food, do you trust genetically modified organisms or nature more? Think of this as this way. Do you trust scientists in, with genetically modified food to maybe resist bugs and things like that? Or do you trust nature dash God? So, yeah. Human impact on natural selection. Continuous use of insecticides, pesticides, herbicides has caused species to develop resistance. Industry has adapted by developing new chemical answers. So it's kind of a cat and mouse game. So the plants adapt to the chemicals we use, so we make new chemicals, and then they adapt even more to it. Viruses and bacteria have adapted to being resistant to medicine, Ursa. All right. that can be a really tough one. All right. Just watch COVID and how it adapts to, the way we handle it. So, poaching in Garangosa National Park, Mozambique. All right. Ivory has no value except cultural. It really doesn't. It doesn't help you if you have got cancer. It doesn't help you regrow hair. All right. It doesn't help your fortune come in that much stronger. So, as a result, tuskless, non ivory elephant mutation has flourished. So, if you're an elephant and you don't have the ivory tusk, the poachers are like, Rick, you're not worth it. We'll go find one that does have a tusk. So, the ones that have tusk, their population have gone, and the ones without the tusk have gone, hey, I'm still around to breed. All right. So the tuskless ones have increased. The geological timescale. Humanity's time on Earth has only been an extremely small fraction of Earth's life. It's measured in eons, eras, periods, and epochs. So I can't see, getting into this very much. Just know that it's in time. So fossils are useful for the knowledge of the history and also shows the evolution phylogenetic tree as well. So basically, where they were and how they adapted over time. So artificial selection is, and you got natural selection, artificial selection. Natural selection is determined by nature and survivability. So if you are not really, if you got a genetic trait, a mutation, and it does not increase your survivability, you're going to die quicker. And then that trait is not going to get passed on. But artificial selection is determined by humans, cats, dogs, apple trees, etc. So sometimes we breed animals or species for a reason. Let me see if I can get this like that. Come on now. Do better. All right. Let's see if I can get it like that. All right, so you can still see me. All right, so artificial selection. Sometimes we do this to increase the productivity. New types of organisms developed, like English bulldogs down here. They are cute. It can be more disease, pest resistant. These guys aren't. We do this quite a bit for crops. So like we'll breed an apple that is more resistant to frost. We'll breed corn that's resistant to a disease, something like that. Okay. This restricts genetic diversity because it decreases the resilience, decreases the survivability. So, yeah. This one right here. So humans bred English bulldogs because they like the look. Is this inhuman? How do English bulldogs give birth? Yep. Look that one up. TOK, theory of knowledge. Are we justified in negative thoughts about GMO crops when we have been genetically modifying apples since before written history? Yep. Give that some thought too. All right. Yep. Oh, they are cute, aren't they, though? I do like them. All right. Extinction. Basically, a species dies. Yep. We talked about this. Everybody dies. All right. Eventually. There's two types. There's background extinction rate, which is nature's way of telling species it's time to go. Generally, it's about like 10 to 100 in a year. Yeah, that's natural to lose that sort of number of species. We're losing a lot more than that, though, than right now. Mass extinction is over 75% of the species going extinct quickly. So, yep. There's been 5 mass extinctions when you look at the time period of the world. So think the dinosaurs. This is caused by changes in climate. So every single one of them. The Holocene extinction event. This is the belief that we are currently in a mass extinction event. All right. It started 9 to 13,000 years ago. And it's basically the extinction rates have increased in the last 100 years. Most of this through habitat loss, I think. Also, you could do climate as well. Main difference is this one is caused by humans, not just climate change. So extinction rates have increased for mammals big time. So Yep, bigger the animal, the more like resources to go into it, the more likely you're going to get extinct. Page 269 to 270 goes into other mass extinctions that we're not going to cover in these notes. Sorry, just not doing it. So if you are in another class, if the professor looks something different than me, just know you got to cover that. Yep. All right. All right, so current extinction rates. Estimates are 2 million species on Earth right now. Yep, that's how many there are. Estimated anyway. Now, 200 to 2,000 extinctions per year. You notice how that is a lot more than the one up here where they're talking about like 10 to 100, wherever that number went. So, yep, quite a bit more. Rate of extinction has increased with the last 300 years, mostly from habitat loss. Yep, extinction rates have increased in hotspots because of increased diversity. There's just more animals there to die, basically, unfortunately. Pests plus animals that are useful to humans are more likely to go extinct. We hunt them out. So if they're bothering us, we kill them. If they're useful to us, hey, we harvest them. All right. Will humanity continue to expand and thrive as habitat loss increases? This is not a blue question. So, it's just a note to take down, something for you to think about. Biotic ways humans increase extinction. So, living ways. We transform the environment. That's what we do. All right. So we usually transform it so it has a direct benefit to us. However, there are indirect things that come with that as well. Overexploitation of other species. Yep. We basically take more than that species can give and survive. We introduce invasive species as well. So intentionally and unintentionally. Pollution is one as well. So yep, those are the four major ways. The Anthropocene. Some say this is the current age that we're living in. So characterized by humans impacting the planet. Start is debated whether you go 1610, 1760, or the 1950s. In the 1610, there's a decrease in farming and a decrease in carbon dioxide. Yep. 1760s, the Industrial Revolution started. Yep, kicked it up right off, along with the American Revolution, right around the 1776. So in the 1950s, you started seeing fossil fuels burning. We saw it before then, but when you started introducing the highways, that's really where it started happening. Study finds we produce more than our body weight in artificial material every year. Yep. Imagine that, all that plastic you make. So, yep. Tech has progressed as well, and the population has grown. Yep. Understanding what causes death and doing something about it. So, look, humans were living longer. Like in the United States here, they used to get Social Security when you were 65, you could retire. Why? Because they thought you'd be dead within 5 to 10 years. All right. Now it's not uncommon to live past 75. In fact, all three of my grandfathers lived past 75. So yeah. Yep. You can figure that one out yourself, how I got three grandfathers. So all right. Better food production as well. So we're also producing more food in the United States. Not as many people die of starvation as they used to. Increased production plus increased consumption. Now we have a problem with less. I'm going to say in the United States we have less of a problem with starving, more of a problem with being overweight. So natural increase in natural resources used as well. So and the problem with that is that natural resources are finite. We only have so many of them. Find tipping point for me. You can use book for this, or you can use AI or Google, your choice. Evidence for the Anthropocene. The atomic bomb was detonated. Yep, and we're going to bring that right there. All right. So the atomic bomb was detonated. Radioactive isotopes released in take millennial to decay. So isotope cesium-137 137 doesn't occur in nature. So when we find it, and we have, it is there because humanity put it there. So, yep. Totally human made. Uh, 2023, the carbon dioxide went above 400 parts per million. Just so you know, before the Industrial Revolution, it was down at 280 parts per million. And you know, carbon dioxide traps heat. So increases global warming, which then causes climate change. So deforestation, we had 420 million acres lost since 1990. Yep. 10 million hectares are destroyed every year between 2015 and 2020 when COVID happened. 17% of the Amazon has been deforested. All right. 42,100 species are on the red list for extinction for the IUCN. Yeah, so two questions to round it out for us with this one for 3.1. Outline the albedo effect and its role in regulating the Earth's global temperature, and compare and contrast the adaptation strategies to climate change for two societies. So, yep, if you do that, my best. All right, later.